Hello, thank you all for coming. So, in my opinion, in my experience, in most startups, you often start with sort of planning everything around your product, having a great idea, having all those conversations. In my experience is we often actually have an exit plan before we even have an entry plan. But in that case, I mean, the pitfall is that the most likely route not to exit is founder issues. And in all these talks about products and exits and everything that is sort of the output of the startup, how do you make sure to sort of align the scope and the commitment in the startup with your co-founders?
I think at least what we did and what I think is really important is that you do it right from the beginning. You're all hyped about your idea, you want to get it going, and then you maybe forget some of these more boring things, but really look your co-founders in the eyes and talk about your commitment. Where are you at this stage? You're not necessarily jumping in full time. I was on maternity, my other co-founder had a full-time job, so at different stages of our journey in the beginning, we had different levels of commitment. And how long can you commit? You're making into a journey, you're most likely not making any money. Like, are you giving it 3 months? Are you giving it 6 months? Do you have a year and a half? Like, how much can you actually commit to it before you have an idea if it's a success or not? If you sign it or not, that's up to you, but go through it, find an online template, go through all the different sections and discuss them. Because you will talk about your commitment levels and the consequences. If you're not putting in the effort, what happens in this situation and so on. And I think really be frank, be open, and be okay with saying the difficult situations. It will help you on the long run. I remember one of the things that we really discussed was, we don't have any funding. We're putting in some money, but what if we need more? And we had actually this section where we're like, okay, it needs to be a substantial amount of money that we put in before it changes the shareholdings dynamics. So we couldn't, if we needed 50,000, and one of us, or 100,000 and needed to put it in, it wouldn't change the percentages, but we would do it as a loan or whatever to keep that dynamic between the co-founders. That's a small example, and really talk about it from the beginning.
So by using the shareholders agreement and sort of the tool to facilitate the sort of hard dialogue between founders in the beginning, did you take into account that at some point going on a venture journey, the investors would also have a take on how the shareholders agreement should be framed?
Yes, and that was actually another reason why we also did a formal one to begin with, because then going into our first investment round, we could say, we have already discussed this, we have these terms in place, and we try to really get our investors in the first round, which is always the easiest round on the terms, but to really just buy into that.
Makes sense. Any additional notes here from you, Jacob, in terms of founder relations?
All that wisdom. I think you said a lot of great things. To add to anything, I think just in the beginning, there's a lot of excitement. You probably have a great idea. You want to get that started. And then you also have the challenge of finding that rockstar co-founder team as well, right? And everyone is not going to be in the same position in life. So somebody's going to be working, somebody's committed to something, and getting everybody to the same page and take the leap. That's kind of a super honest conversation, right? And for us, that meant that different founders needed to take different risk. And then we needed to have an honest conversation around that. But also I think, back to the shareholder agreement and a bit of the boring stuff, it's super helpful as a framework to have those discussions. And then it also becomes very real, and it also becomes very visual for everyone involved on what does this journey entail? What is the commitment actually needed? And you cannot really be in for the fun first 6 months, and it's actually going to be a long haul. So we went through that, and that was very, very nice after being doing that. Because then okay, we cleared this, we had the tough conversations, and then we could focus on building Aid in a sense.
On that note, do you think it's important that sort of everybody would be aligned? One thing is to be honest, but it's important in a 3-founder team that you're more or less aligned. Do you want to commit the same amount of hours, or do you basically just shuffle the cap table to make it reflect the commitment here? Any thoughts on that?
I'm a firm believer kind of in a democratic cap table and equal co-founder setup. I think that resonates like how we as a team want to build a company. It resonates kind of also like that it is a longer journey that you are on. So yes, you can shuffle some percentages around. It will probably not like change the final outcome anyway. That was at least how I resonated.
I agree. I wouldn't change the dynamics in the cap table, but it's also utopia to believe that we will at any time, at any point in time, put in the same effort, put in the same commitment. On a longer base, yes, of course, we probably will, but we're also coming into it with different skill sets, with different things. So I don't think you should go into those like tiny details because it will just bite you in the ass, because then you're like, but I worked 8 hours yesterday, but I worked 10, I worked 5. But that's not healthy. The healthy thing is what you do for the company and how valuable you are.
Cool. Makes perfect sense. It sort of resonates with my own experience. I can tell, I like the fact that you mentioned the shareholders agreement. Being a lawyer is one of the tools here. I can tell I've been a founder team with 3 lawyers. We were the management team, and we had a very, very lengthy shareholders agreement. So don't overdo it. Just go with something slightly standard here. The idea of things changing, I mean, the idea of planning everything from day one sort of makes no sense. I mean, nobody, at least in my experience, most start founders would know that they would probably have to pivot, they would have to adjust, they would have to constantly stay agile. I suppose that also applies in your founder relation. You're not necessarily the same on day half a year down the line as you are the first day. I mean, how do you navigate through this?
We are obviously early days. I think in the beginning, we actually spent quite a lot of time, coming together as a management team. And for us, that meant that we're super transparent in how we were working, what we were working with. We were doing 1-week sprints, so everyone knew, and we got an insight into each and everyone's core competence, so to say, and that kind of work stream. And then in that process as well, we learned, because we come from different backgrounds, different styles. We get to know each other and how we work. And that was a great stepping stone for us. And then obviously we matured into that and are a bit more goal focused or gives more responsibility to each of the founder. But that worked well for us.
Cool.
I think as were mentioned, we came into Kogo from being in the management group of Momondo before together, so we knew each other. So we came in and could almost execute from day one. But I think the key thing here is that talk about it from the beginning, the alignment, where you want to go, how you see the company. But don't then just put it in a box and say, we talked about it, we set it out. It's something you will continue to have to talk about and revise. Investment rounds are always good because they really force you to talk about these things. You will get questions. Are you in it for the short term? Are you startup founder? Are you the long term? How committed are you? You're gonna be locked up once again on hands and feet. What does that mean? And you're gonna have all these discussions, but check in with each other and set the alignment on the fly as well. It's not a one-time thing.
So, but as a sort of a rule of thumb here, you could actually use your investment rounds. Usually you would do once a year, once every 18 months. And that's at least, unless you put it in your calendar, like a great check-in, or...
It's at least a place where you get forced to it. Because you get these terms,
And what is this check-in like? Is it like, I suppose there are 2 elements, right? There is a check-in that now you have to speak out loud to investors what you're actually doing and what you're planning to do. So it's a reminder, or at least it's sort of for everybody to speak out loud. What are we actually doing here? Where are we going? But also, I suppose, the idea of getting a lot of money to scale, particularly in the later stage rounds where you've been, the company just looks significantly different the day after the investment. Is that also something you've taken into account, that now we were like a 4-person management team, we had 3 employees, and now our investors tell us to go hire 20 people. So dynamics will be completely different.
Yeah, so at Coco, that hasn't been our approach, where we have more the skill set that we have, and we have been working with the budgets also post or pre-investment rounds of where we were planning to go, and of course hoping to get this money in to make it a success. So yeah, I don't.
So not necessarily.
No, I don't think so. Okay. I don't think the situation changes massively once you get the investment. Now you just actually have the opportunity to make it happen. But we were planning for the thing all the time.
Okay, cool. Any thoughts on this? You also just did an investment round. Any changes?
Changes, absolutely, but also like great teams are built in the trenches, right? And funding round is a really, really nice trench to be in together as a team. So that was really good for us. It was also, in a sense, the first time we, as a team, were required to do really, really complex decision making. So like use that, and it's also like you need to sharpen up everything that you like. You have a fluffy idea, and that needs to become super, super sharp, and then everyone needs to bring their A game, and that's how you create a great team in a sense.
Cool, makes sense. So ideally, funding rounds is not just for funds; it's actually also to align interests in the team.
Yeah, and get cash.
Yeah, surely for funding, right? So I recall I actually had I did fundraising from PreSeed once, and I remember when we did the funds, we were through before we closed the round. We had a due diligence on HR, and Mass from PreSeed told us that our company was being driven like a Romanian farmers collective. I'm not even sure what that is, but I'm pretty sure it was not a compliment. How do you see founder dynamics in terms of roles and responsibilities?
I can start. When we started the journey, we were like, okay, we're building a company. We're 2 people to begin with, then later 3 co-founders. But we're like, what tasks do we have? Okay, there's some HR, there's some legal, there's some finance. Okay, there's marketing, there's sales, there's product, there's tech, there's all these different things. Okay, lined them all up. Okay, then we went through them one by one. Okay, who has the best competences or experience, or is the most likely to do this easiest task? Okay, and then we split all things across the 2 of us, later the 3 of us. There was a few ones that was, like, of course, shared strategy and those things. And in the beginning, we still had I wouldn't call it overlap, but we still actually did a lot of the tasks together. So what it meant that we had split every area of responsibility between each other meant who had the responsibility for it to happen, to initiate it and to close it. And if anything came from it, run with it. That didn't mean you had to do it alone. And in the beginning, like, we did even first pitches together. We did applications and submissions together, but we were really also just tuning into our tone of voice. How do we talk about Coco? How do we tell our story? How do we say these things? And then we, of course, quickly moved on. So, for example, Robin, my co-founder, he's doing investments, so he's doing all of that. I'm doing soft funding, so I'm doing all of that. But then we, of course, help each other wherever needed. So it has worked well for us. So I can definitely recommend it.
Cool. Any thoughts on this, Jacob?
I like the structure. Like, I'm an old management consultant, so I like structure. I think that's a great idea. We are obviously on the road and maturing and all that, and we have a lot of issues or problems that we need to solve, and we need to solve them together as a team. That obviously also means that you create friction as well in the founder team. Friction is good in a sense, but you just need to manage it so you have the right level of it. I think we managed that by, talking about friction and having kind of a humoristic way of telling someone to back off if they get their nose too deep, or like, this is mine. But actually, like, take the hard stuff and try to humor them a little bit, and create that platform to be allowed to talk about it in a good way in your team.
Cool. Do you use any type of sort of frameworks? I mean, obviously you have like some sort of methodology here, but would there be any type of frameworks to use you could recommend?
The kind of founder friction. I think what is really been giving for us is that we do a weekly retro, and we have and that creates the platform to allow us to talk about stuff, right? What is going great? What makes us mad? What makes us sad? And then we can address those issues really early.
So basically the framework is like a weekly check-in. Which
I would say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have a weekly catch-up between the three co-founders as well. Again, we came from the same management group in another company, and we've done a lot of different management training. So we had a lot of the same methodology and a lot of the same understanding. Work with healthy teams, change management, right? Like if one leaves, if one comes in, if one thing changes, you go through this cycle to become a high-performing team. And what really makes it healthy is that you can do it in 2 months, or you can do it in 30 minutes or 2 minutes. But acknowledging that something's changed, the dynamic, and then getting back on track, I think is a good one.
So I mean, obviously you had the sort of advantage that you knew each other from the beginning. Would it be fair to say that, imagine that you did not know each other from the beginning, that there's actually a value in discussing things together in the Romanian Farmers Collective in the beginning, sort of to just get to know each other. And then once you sort of get to know each other, you can sort of divide responsibilities to become slightly more efficient.
Yeah, I would definitely say so, and get together outside of work and get to know each other, like show genuine interest for each other's person, not just your skills and your expertise. Like, who are you as a person? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Like, what are their names? It's not just things. Show genuine interest of the person, because you're in it for the better and worse. But yeah.
Could that to some extent, so you started, Jacob, your company with friends, right?
Absolutely. We're
They were friends.
We are still friends. But I would say, like, and we were not friends. We are acquaintances, and now we're becoming co-founders in a sense. But I would say, like, getting to know each other personally, super, super duper important. We had a external coach that kind of helped us jumpstart that process in a way, and like had a really deep conversation, like, who is Jakob, who is Jens, who is Johan, and where do you want to be? The classic question of, like, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Like, what is your role in aid? How does aid look? And that was a really, really fruitful discussion, a fun discussion, because then you kind of get a playing field for your team, and you can see where people are coming from and where they want to go. So that also gave us a good base.
So actually, like, spending resources on developing the team. I mean, most people would get like great UX advice if they were building a product, but maybe they wouldn't know to actually hire a coach to ensure great founder dynamics.
No, that worked well for us. I think, it was one of those things that kind of jump started in a way, saved us some time, and took us to a better place. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one of the things about knowing each other on a deeper level is that you also know the bad things about each other, and it's so important. I know exactly, or let's put it the other way. Robin knows exactly how I act, or if I'm really like short or quick or something, and he knows it's not personal. And maybe I just had a short time in between meetings. Maybe it's like, but he knows exactly what I stand for and where I am, even though, we all have ups and downs. So you can also, protect and help each other when you're not feeling your best. So knowing each other when you're bad is equally important.
Okay, great takeaway. Another thing here is that, I mean, as the startup evolves, the role also evolves. How many discussions do you have? Do you have, from the outset, do you have an idea what your role would be like in 5 years? Or is that something, nobody can predict the future, so we take it on the fly?
I can start.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I'm the moderator, so
Yeah. I think we really went into this with the three of us because we complement each other. We knew each other, we liked each other, but we weren't close friends. So we're not doing this because this could be fun. We went into it because I could see that Robin had these skills, I had these ones, and Martin had these ones. And we actually didn't have much overlapping. Our personalities are quite different, but therefore it's also been there's good synergies around who is responsible for what. And then, of course, one thing is skill set, but when I was thinking about this talk, I also came to think about that it's also maybe a motivation. What do you want to do? Because maybe none of you have the experience of working, or in our situation, heavy experience with working on product, but maybe we both had aspiration to do it. But in our end, it has worked out quite well in those things. But be honest, not also what you want to be in the future. Like, yes, this is where I am now, but this is also where I want to be in the future.
And is that, I suppose that would be an ongoing check-in, right? Because, I mean, going from 1 to 10 in a company is just significantly different than going from 11 to 100, even though you just like the idea of being CEO.
Yeah, so in our case, it's quite clear. Martin is the technical wizard. He's the key developer. He's the CTO. I'm the COO. And Robin is the CEO. And we discussed it at one of our catch-ups as well, and had these talks because we read about founders and read about founders changing when the companies grow. Where do we want to be? CEO stepping down when you're not a startup and doing all of that. And Robin opened up and said he was like he actually wanted to be able to be the CEO when the company was big and we were past the startup phase, because that's really where we want to be. We want to build a great company, not just the building of it, but actually have a great company. And we were all aligned, and we were like, we're going to do whatever we can to support you in that, because it's not something that you do alone as a partner, but yeah. So we all built each other up on where we want to go.
Great.
But long term, we obviously we need to kind of move from doers to leaders in a sense. So I think to be able to stay in the company and excel, you also need to grow as a person and as a leader, and that happens quite fast, right? So pretty early in your life, you start to hire people, and you want to be a good leader. So for us, we are quite focused on having a feedback culture. So we can, discuss development areas, what we're doing good. So like we get that into our DNA. So we actually can grow as people, because that's our responsibility as well as a founder team.
And is that just an ongoing thing? It's part of your DNA, or is it something you facilitate on your weekly meeting, or how does it work?
Yeah. So like that doesn't come natural at all. I think for me personally, I know the benefits of it. I hate it. So like if I'm busy, that's the one meeting I'm gonna scrap, and it comes again in 2 weeks. But it's you need to have the meetings. You need to have the retros. You need to have the one-on-ones, and you need to. I really love kind of the culture when someone does something good, something great, and like it's immediate feedback. It's a pat on the back. It's a high fives. But then also like when something can be better, or even if it's shit, right? Then you like it should be a really, really short a loop from that happening to like someone being aware of that, because then people can act, they can grow, they can change.
Makes sense. So, like, it seems as if like aligning interests and expectations and where you want to go with the company is absolutely fundamental here. But how do you perceive, or do you discuss the idea of wanting something but not being able to do so? Like, for instance, I really want to be CEO and I want to take this all the way, but then 2 years down the line, somebody knocks the door and simply looks to be a better CEO. Is that part of the discussion, that you constantly stay agile to sort of changes and assess skill set? Or is there sort of a founder DNA here where you're like, we are founders and we are musketeers, so we're going to stick with the founder team? Any thoughts on this?
I haven't had anyone knock on the door yet.
Well, that's probably the easy way out here.
We haven't had anyone knock on our door yet either. yes, it is constant. I guess it is, but acknowledging that it could potentially happen, and agreeing that we want what's best for the company, and then we'll take it from there. It hasn't been any case in our
Okay.
Kogo journey.
Okay. Great. So do you have any sort of additional thing? One thing is like, if I get you right, you have like a one sort of touch base meeting every week. Do you have any other sort of frameworks or tools you use to ensure, on the one hand side, transparency, but also, of course, efficiency? Because, I mean, you kind of discuss everything. Any sort of takeaways here that we can tell people?
So I think we and most companies are good at having the executing meetings and the catch-ups and the alignments and so on. So it is some of these extra things. But yeah, we have our weekly founder catch-up. We go out to lunch to get outside of the office from time to time to also just talk. Sometimes we talk strategy, sometimes we talk weekends, or I don't know, but just to build on the relationship. And then we have also spent time on trying to build, new memories together that is not from Momondo, but that is really in Kogo. So we got the opportunity to go to Web Summit and were invited by Digital Hub Denmark. And we were like, that's a great opportunity. I would never pay for it, but now it's free. Let's take it as well as a co-founder team building trip. So, yeah.
Lots of team building around sort of the core of what you're actually doing, output as a business, but actually also constantly preserving the team.
Yes. It's just key important.
Cool. Any sort of management tool, like frameworks that you brought from management consultancy?
We do the 7S, we do the porters, but I don't know. We evolve. We obviously have a super rigid kind of meeting structure. We try to take decisions that are informed. I think key here for our stage and what we're doing is to be able to do fast decisions. So we use the Amazon model, right? So if there's a one-way door, then and it's irreversible decision in a sense. We think long and hard, and we take the right one. If there are reversible decisions, there are two-way doors, then we run. And then we kind of inform the others, and then we run. That has worked very well for us. For our stage, like we are 9 people, 3 founders. Then we haven't outgrown the Slack channel. We can run everything in Slack in a sense, and then we have like also a meeting structure and a kind of a documentation structure on that one. But I think the challenge becomes a bit more. You're also just 10. Great work for 10. Yeah.
Have you considered what is sort of the size? I mean, in my experience, it sort of changes when the team grows a big, so you cannot have one conversation during lunch. So that once the conversation splits up, my experience is that also a lot of information is lost, and all of a sudden you have to manage that. Whereas if you're like having one conversation during lunch, it's very easy for everyone to be aligned. Do you have like any sort of take? Is it a count? Is it a cultural thing? How do you work with this, if at all?
I think it's back to transparency, and then it actually becomes it's a pretty big load on the founder team and the CEO to keep the transparency, to inform everyone what is actually happening, and that might be something that in the rush of everything that you don't prioritize. But actually spending time with the team, celebrating every win, giving transparency on what we are doing, right? Because then people understand, like if they understand the vision and they understand what we do, then it's a much better place to work at, right? So I think that's very, very important.
Cool.
Not just a small add-on, because I completely agree on the transparency, but trust. And that really builds down to culture. So I think culture is the most important thing, right? Because if you trust that your co-workers, if you trust that they're always taking the same decision, the right decisions, and that they're putting in the effort that they have, that's key. And then information flows more as well. Unless, if you're skeptical, it just builds bad culture. Yeah, it's an evil circle.
So culture and a bit of direction here also, so everybody knows what you're actually doing. And I suppose on that note, investment rounds could also be used, because I mean, you know, you start with doing one thing in meat, and then during like 9 months you're actually doing something slightly different or something completely different, and then you sort of reiterate, what are we actually doing here?
And you have to tell your team you're running out of money.
Yeah.
And you're doing everything you can to secure more money and continue to secure their salary, and that they really trust that you do.
Do you do any? Is it team building exercises? Is it, you know, out of office events or stuff like that to facilitate this, or is it basically just part of, you know, work schedule?
So we started under COVID, completely remote. Couldn't get together. Christmas party cancelled. All of that, but no, definitely try to do things outside as well with the hybrid culture. Because we're so small, we ensure that the days that we're at the office, people are there, welcome every day. But the days that we're at the office, everyone is there. So we get people together.
Okay, cool. Okay, so in summary here, is it fair to say that, you know, in order to, like, one takeaway here, in order to initially align interests, obviously that's important. I mean, that is a takeaway. But there are parts of the process that can actually help you out with it. You mentioned particularly the shareholders agreement, saying that is just a great tool to actually help align interests in terms of what are we doing here, what do we want to do, how much effort do we put. So that's one takeaway here. Also, I mean, one of the key words here, I assume, would be transparency, and be as open to you know people and culture as part of the metrics that are going to be developed, rather than just, you know, ARR, beautiful product and so, but actually put in resources to build team and ensure alignment. And then one of the thoughts that I had when I listened to you, like, maybe titles are less important than what you're actually doing. I mean, obviously, title would sort of introduce what you would conceptually be doing, but the internal alignment about who's actually doing what, and somebody needs to take care of lunch, and that's not part of the C-level title regardless. So I mean, that type of alignment is actually critical, and don't think that title in itself would help you solve that problem. And then meet frequently and talk about how you're doing, and not only on sort of a company level, but on a personal level. Thing I forgot as the takeaways here.
For having difficult conversations.
Build a platform for having a difficult conversation. Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to open up the stage. And if you have any questions, this is the time now. For Bibi or Jacob or Sam, the legal one as well, yeah?
In the search for a co-founder, are there any red flags that should trigger you in order to make the decision early on? This is not the guy I want in a company, even though you get along very well. You have good ideas together, a lot of spirit in the beginning, but small details.
A good co-founder should, in a sense, cover it all, right? He needs to cover competence, he needs to cover commitment, time spent, and that he actually want to do the journey. So any one of those would be kind of a very, very high red flag in my book.
One final question.
I heard about the red flags, but what about the green flags, I suppose? Because sometimes maybe a co-founder doesn't really tick all the boxes which you just mentioned, but maybe there's a huge set of green flags that you could work with, that it would actually be powerful as a partnership moving forward.
I would say complementary competences and passion, and a nice person that you want to spend time with, but that goes without saying.
Passion, a nice person, and energy.
Thank you. So we're out of time, but thank you all for joining our talk, and give a round of applause to PP, Jakob, and Sam.